For 20 years, his grandmother's farm had been the most prosperous in the village. But when young James noticed the crops mysteriously failing, he began investigating. In the early morning mist, he discovered a trail of weathered tools and freshly disturbed soil, leading to the forbidden barn. Through the shadows of the doorway, he saw a figure that shouldn't exist. What he found that day would change his family's life forever. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. The year was 1942, and the small farming village of Millbrook faced the harsh reality of war. Maria stood at her kitchen window, watching her 3 young children play in the yard while she kneaded bread dough with trembling hands. The memory of that morning still haunted her. Soldiers marching down their dirt road, their boots leaving deep imprints in the mud. Thomas had been working in the fields when they came. Maria remembered his voice, usually so gentle when singing lullabies to their children, rising in protest as the soldiers dragged him away. Their youngest daughter's cries echoed across the farm as she watched her father disappear into the army truck. Months passed with only sporadic letters from Thomas. Then one day, an official envelope arrived. Maria's hands shook as she read the words that would change their lives forever. Thomas had fallen in battle. The letter offered condolences and a medal, poor compensation for a husband, father, and farmer. But life on a farm doesn't pause for grief. The fields needed tending, the animals required care, and 2 leaders. Maria threw herself into the work, learning tasks that had always been Thomas's domain. She studied the soil, memorized planting schedules, and worked from dawn until her hands bled. The seasons turned, and Maria poured herself into the work. Despite the challenges of running the farm alone, she managed to keep it productive, providing for her children through the difficult years. Day after day, Maria worked tirelessly on the farm. From sunrise to sunset, she could be seen in the fields, tending to the crops, fixing equipment, and caring for the animals. Her determination never wavered, even when faced with the most challenging tasks that typically required multiple farmhands. Her children grew stronger, helping with the daily tasks. Her eldest son learned to drive the tractor, her daughter became skilled at animal care, and even the youngest developed a talent for predicting weather patterns. The farm's success continued, becoming one of the most prosperous in the region. 2 decades passed this way. Maria's hair turned gray, her children married, and grandchildren began playing in the same yard where their parents once ran. James, the eldest grandson, had grown into a capable farmer under Maria's guidance. He took pride in maintaining the family legacy, working alongside his grandmother to keep the farm running smoothly. Year after year, their harvests remained strong, while neighboring farms often struggled. Even during dry seasons, their crops seemed to fare better than most. The other farmers often asked James about his methods, but he could only share what he knew, the regular care and attention they gave to every acre of their land. Maria would often tell James with a distant look in her eyes that they were blessed. "Our farm has always been lucky," she would say softly, as if God himself is watching over us. James never knew quite what to make of these words, but he couldn't deny their farm's consistent success. But change arrived with the spring of 1965. Maria's eldest grandson, James, noticed the first signs. The wheat didn't grow quite as tall, the vegetables weren't as plentiful, and the animals seemed restless. Something was different, but what? James began investigating. He checked the soil, examined the irrigation systems, and consulted with agricultural experts. Nothing seemed obviously wrong, yet the farm's legendary prosperity was clearly declining. One morning, James woke before dawn to check the fields. As the sun rose, he noticed something peculiar in the morning dew. Footprints. They weren't fresh, but rather a worn path, barely visible unless caught in the perfect morning light. The trail led toward the old barn, a building that had stood abandoned for as long as he could remember. Standing before the barn, James remembered the stories he heard as a child. The farm workers used to talk about hearing someone working in the fields at night, and how tools that needed repair would mysteriously be fixed by morning. His mother had always dismissed these tales, but now facing these mysterious footprints, those old stories took on a new meaning. The barn door creaked as James pushed it open. Dust motes danced in the rays of early sunlight that penetrated the gloom. At first, the barn appeared empty, except for old farming equipment and piles of straw. But then James heard it, soft, labored breathing coming from the back corner. His heart pounding, James followed the sound. There, lying on a makeshift bed of straw, was an elderly man. His clothes were worn but clean, his white hair neatly combed despite his humble surroundings. In his weathered hand, he clutched something that caught the morning light, a gold wedding ring. James moved closer, and the man's eyes opened. They were the same shade of blue as James's mother's, the same as his own. Next to the bed lay a faded photograph, its edges worn smooth from years of handling. It showed a young couple on their wedding day, his grandmother Maria and a man he had only seen in old family photos, his grandfather Thomas. The truth hit James like a thunderbolt. This man wasn't a stranger seeking shelter. He was the family's guardian angel, the secret behind their farm's decades of prosperity. Thomas hadn't died in the war. He had deserted, choosing a life of shadow and solitude to protect his family from the consequences of harboring a deserter. For 23 years, Thomas had lived in the barn, emerging at night to tend the fields, repair equipment, and watch over his family from afar. He witnessed his children grow up, saw his grandchildren born, all while remaining invisible. Only now, as age finally overcame his strength, did the farm begin to show signs of his absence. When Maria learned the truth, she ran to the barn despite her arthritic knees. The moment she saw Thomas, decades of mystery suddenly made sense. The flourishing crops, the successful harvests, the feeling that had kept her bound to this place. Her husband had never truly left them. Word spread quickly through the village, and people came from all around to see the man who had become a silent guardian for his family. The doctor urged Thomas to go to the hospital, but he refused to leave the barn where he had spent the last 23 years. This was his home, he said, the place where he had watched over his family all these years. That night, surrounded by Maria, his children and grandchildren, Thomas passed away peacefully. His hand never left Maria's, and the wedding ring still shone on his finger. The notebook of farming secrets lay on his chest, his final gift to the family he had protected for so long. While the farm never quite matched its previous prosperity, it remained successful thanks to Thomas's carefully documented wisdom. In the final pages of his notebook, Thomas had written about the joy and pain of his secret life. He described the happiness of watching his children grow strong and capable, seeing his grandchildren take their first steps, and witnessing Maria's incredible strength as she raised their family. But he also wrote of the crushing loneliness of countless nights spent alone in the barn, of fighting back tears when he heard his children's laughter but couldn't join in, of watching birthdays and celebrations from afar. Every day he had to resist the urge to run to his family, to hold them, to tell them he was there. His notebook became a treasured family heirloom, passed down through generations, along with the story of a man whose love was strong enough to endure decades of solitude, watching his family's happiness from the shadows. And you, could you bear watching your loved ones from afar, present but forever separated by the walls of silence?